Hello, welcome back. This is Sun Sign Stereotypes and the Planetary Nodes Part 4. That's right, we're on Part 4, and today we're going to look specifically at when the Sun is in the signs of Cancer, Leo, and Virgo, and where the planetary nodes are during those times of the year. So, on Part 3, we went through when the Sun is in Aries, Taurus, and Gemini. Part 1 and 2 is a whole another kind of build up to this, and all of those are available. And there's going to be links in the if you look down, and I might be able to get them on the screen too, but in the description here there'll be links to the other parts if you want to go there. So welcome. So the whole concept of this, just in brief review, is that of course if you're born on the same day of someone else, all the planetary nodes are in the same position. And this is basically true if somebody is 1 year old or 80 years old. So that backdrop of all those planetary nodes, we share those. And and what I noticed is that a lot of the stereotypes that have emerged about sun signs are actually references to the planetary nodes. So people don't know they're talking about the planetary nodes, but if you get into the planetary nodes, you can see that we've we've unconsciously blended these archetypes with the sun sign and just conglomerate them all into what the sun sign means. So I'm going to share my screen here, and I've got a couple slides before we get into the main slideshow. And let me get this to the side here. So let's see here. Let's start with this slide here. This is just a slide that shows how the nodes are seen. So the planetary nodes are seen opposite each other, like like all nodes. Like the lunar nodes are always opposite, right? But it gets confusing because when we look at the geocentric nodes, they're not always opposite in the zodiac, but they are always opposite for real astronomically. So for example, so here's Earth's orbit. So let's just say that the Earth was here. If the Earth was right here in its orbit, we would see the south node of Venus in conjunction with the Sun and the north node of Venus, right? And if the Earth was, say, here in its orbit, we would see the south node of Mercury in Taurus in conjunction with the Sun in Taurus and the north node of Mercury in Taurus and the south node of Mars. Um, and I have that Scorpio there, which is um, that's I said it wrong. So basically, what happens is when the see this is how it gets confusing is when the see this the north node of Mercury in Scorpio. So we would actually see all three of these nodes and the Sun in Scorpio if we were here. If the Earth was here, we would see all these nodes in Taurus. So the geocentric nodes, we see how these kind of unravel through the year. Um, Here's another little illustration to show this, that, um, whoops, I got to move my little thing here, I'm sorry. So this illustration shows that, see this outer orbit is would be Mars's orbit. And so if the Earth is here at the Y point, we would see Mars in Taurus. But if Earth is here, we would see that same node of Mars in Aries. And then if Earth is here, we'd see that same node of Mars in Gemini. So because what happens with the nodes of Mars is that they kind of do a 3-sign swing. So the north node of Mars is going to be either in Aries or Taurus or Gemini, and it just kind of goes back and forth between them. But in reality, that north node of Mars is just on the same spot in its orbit. And so this illustration just shows that we see it in a different sign because we're moving in our orbit. So I hope that helps a little bit with that. And I've got just a couple more illustrations before we get into the main slideshow. Let's see. This is this is an example of Venus's nodes. So they're opposite, and obviously, if we were here, we would see them in a conjunction. If we were here, we would see them in a conjunction. And when we're at this position, we see the nodes of Venus as the farthest away that they get, 72 degrees. So what this also tells us is that for the inner planet nodes, Venus and Mercury, excuse me, and take a drink for a second. When the Earth is moving by the node this way, look how close it gets to that node of Venus. It moves really fast, right? Um, so there's 2 times a year, one time in the year when the Earth is kind of cruising by the south node of Venus, and then there's another time of year that the Earth is cruising by the north node of Venus. And at those times, we see the geocentric node of Venus move very quickly, especially in relation to the opposite node. So if the Earth's here, this node we see move really fast. This node kind of is barely moving. So a good analogy for this is if you think about Venus, there's 2 conjunctions. There's the inferior conjunction with the sun, and there's the superior conjunction with the sun. On the inferior sun conjunction, Venus is actually going retrograde because we're so close to it and we're moving fast, right? We're in relation to how close we are. That retrograde Venus sun conjunction happens so fast, right? It's very quick. Now, the superior Venus sun conjunction will go on for, I forget how long. It's like 2 months, or it goes on for a long time. I mean, not exact, but they're close in proximity for quite a while, and so that's all related to this. So another example to illustrate this is if you have these. This is what this is right here. I'm going to stop my screen share for a quick second, and I'm going to show you this little pamphlet here. This is my I sell these. I'm closing my online store. I'm going to do a 35% sale off of everything. So if you're interested in getting this, this is kind of like a planetary node ephemeris, and it just breaks out each month the movement of all the planet's nodes. This is helpful because you can begin to see these other patterns that if you just plug them into the chart, like SolarFire has, or Astro Gold has now added them. Yay, Astro Gold, you added them. Thank you so much. We requested it and they listened, so that's super cool that they did that. So jumping back here, so this is just the electronic version of what I was showing you in the hand pamphlet. I like the hard copy. Just it's just nice sometimes to just grab it and reference it quick. So here we're looking at the month of June. Now June is a time when, see right here, the nodes of Venus are in a conjunction at 17 degrees Gemini. So now if you think about that illustration we were just looking at, we would know that the Earth is really close to one of those nodes and really far from the other one, right? One's in the inferior conjunction position, one's in the superior conjunction position. So if we just scroll down, now which one is which? So there's the north node of Venus. North node of Venus starts the month of June at 13 Gemini, right? And it ends the month at 30 Gemini. So that's, 13 to 30. We're looking at, what is that? 17, no, 18, 17 degrees. Yeah. Whew, quick math. Now, the south node of Venus starts at 27 degrees Taurus, cruises all the way through Gemini very fast, goes all the way through Cancer, and ends at 17 Leo. So that just illustrates that um, from 27 Taurus to 17 Leo, that's 80 degrees. So, the superior position node we saw move 17 degrees, the inferior 80 degrees in the same amount of time. So that's why having this look at the nodes is really helpful to kind of grasp not just where they are, but the larger pattern that we're seeing. So let me see, just make sure I don't have another illustration to show you. I don't think I showed you this one yet. This is just another example of the Venus node conjunction. So there's Earth and there's those Venus nodes. So just an example of what I was just talking about. So without further ado, we're going to do a little walkthrough, jump back to slideshow here. And the one thing that I'm going to improve on this in the future that I got really good feedback was it would be great if I had the position of the sun on here for each day. Because obviously each year the planets are in a different position, but the sun's always going to be at the same degree each day, with that little bit of wiggle room for leap year, right? Um, so being the summer solstice, June 21st, we know that the sun is right here. And this is the start of the sun in Cancer period. So what I've been doing on this is we're just going to kind of do a general slide through the sun in Cancer, and then we're going to go back and then kind of talk a little bit about the different planetary node positions while the sun is in Cancer. And I'll just give an introduction just to get you established. And again, if you've seen part 3, or if you've studied the nodes at all, you're going to know that the nodes of Uranus barely move. They just do a little wiggle thing here. North node of Uranus is always in Gemini. The south node of Uranus is always in Sagittarius, right? South node of Neptune is always in Aquarius. The north node of Neptune is always in Leo. As we get closer in, so the north node of Jupiter will swing all the way up into Cancer here during the year, and it'll actually goes back to the 30th degree of Gemini still. The heliocentric is definitely in Cancer, but geocentric we see a bigger swing. And then, like I was saying with the Mars node, we see this kind of swing like this. I think it does. It might dip into Cancer for a second, but I can't remember off the top of my head right now. And then Libra to Sag is the other Mars swing. So that's just a general thing. So it looks really busy right now. And when you put the nodes on a chart, a birth chart, to me, it's almost a little overwhelming because you've got so much going on there. So I really do like to just look at the nodes separate and have 2 charts. So I have a little daily thread called Planetary Currents, and I post the nodes chart and I post the chart for the day. And if there's significant nodal activity, I'll talk about that. I'll do a very, very brief little write-up. If there's conjunction with the planetary node, geocentric or heliocentric, that'll get included often. And if not, focus on something else. But I do post these daily right now. So that's another way to follow if you're interested. That's on social media, on Instagram and Facebook. I think Narragon Astrology is the Instagram one, and Bradley Narragon is my Facebook one, and it's just the same thing. And I do them on the story and the post, so whatever your flavor is, if you like that. So as we go through, the goal here is to have something that first seems a little overwhelming and complex and a lot for people, to realize that there's a general flow and pattern here, right? So we're just going through, and so yeah, at the start of Cancer, notice that we have all these north nodes, all the inner planet north nodes are in Gemini, right? And the south node of Venus goes into Leo very quickly, and then followed by the south node of Mercury. Now, the south node of Mars is going to be in Libra for all Cancer suns, because that's moving a little slower, right? So this is about mid Cancer. So, if we had the sun on here, it would be in here somewhere, right? Um, at this point, we've got the north nodes of Mercury and Venus have both moved into Cancer, but the south nodes of Mercury and Venus are in Leo, right? So we'll just keep going. Now we've got that south node of Venus has gone into Virgo. Those north nodes of Mercury and Venus in Cancer, they're moving on up. And this is, oh, now we're at Leo Sun. So that's our Cancer Sun right there. So now what I wanted to do is just in very brief go for a little bit on the south nodes of the inner planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and then the north nodes of Mercury, Venus, Mars. And boop, there we are back to the start of Cancer. So, and in the next parts, so 5 and 6 would be the rest of the zodiac, and part 7, and I don't know if there's going to be more than part 7, but we'll get more into the outer planet nodes with this in in a deeper way. But right now we're kind of focusing on, and the reason I'm doing this is in this fashion is that as far as astrology goes, these transpersonal planets are not as uh, not as evident, like you want to get to know somebody, you're wondering what their moon sign is, and what's their moon, sun, and rising, and then the next thing you kind of want to know is, well, where's their Mercury and Venus and Mars at, right? Of course, if you're an astrologer, you want to see the whole chart, but if you're new to astrology, you're probably gonna really like, well, what's their Venus Mars? You're gonna that's gonna be your next step after you do a sun moon rising kind of thing, um, and that gives a lot of information. So obviously, astrology provides us with a lot of information, and it can be overwhelming at times. And so I find it helpful to do this approach. And so, Cancer suns, and again in evolutionary astrology, the sun sign is the correlating it to how Leo follows Cancer, or and Cancer, the moon, personality, fifth house follows the fourth house, right? So from Cancer, moon, fourth house, from the personality comes forth the expression, and the sun, of course, is our expression. It's our energy. It's our vitality. It's that yang outward expression. But the real personality is going to, in evolutionary astrology, is specifically moon, Cancer, fourth house as an archetype. So just to throw that in there. So if we're looking at Cancer suns and we think of, like, what are some of these stereotypes or things that people talk about Cancer suns? So just to throw this out there, so on these early Cancer suns, you've got that south node of Venus goes into Leo pretty quickly. So you've got, and then by, you know, by the 27th of June, you've got that south node of Mercury um, and Venus in Leo. So obviously, Leo is the most dramatic sign. It's got a lot of flair. So it's interesting to think about a lot of Cancer suns coming from this Leo place in how they communicate, south node of Mercury and south node of Venus, how they relate and share, right? So if you think about what you know about the Leo archetype, do you know Cancer suns born on this day that act like Leos a little bit in their relationships? Are they really dramatic? And to me, I think that one thing I've noticed is that the Cancer Sun, and this also it it seems to there's all these distortions of the archetype within patriarchal cultures, of course, and so you have this whole thing of like, oh, Cancers are just over emotional and do do do, and I to me, um, when I see these Leo South nodes, there's kind of this extra drama to the emotional experience for Cancer Sun. So to me, that these Leo South nodes make sense in terms of how some people have how we've developed, collectively this stereotype for Cancer Suns, and if you've got a South node of Venus and Mercury in Leo, especially imagine another planet conjunct that, or imagine they're in the seventh house and they're Aquarius rising, or like there's a lot of scenarios where you could imagine that these south nodes of Leo could be highly accentuated in the chart. So here's this Cancer sun, and they just seem really over the top dramatic or something, and these are Leo traits that are kind of bleeding into the Cancer sun archetype and become part of the Cancer sun stereotype. So that that's the whole premise of this sun sign stereotypes and the planetary nodes, is that this is exactly what's happening, is we're we're taking these nodes but we don't know it. So just to backtrack a little bit on these first days of Cancer sun, I guess I'm jump to the north nodes because it's a good juxtaposition just to, I mean, look at that. All those north nodes in Gemini. And of course, we have that north node of Uranus is always in Gemini. It's a really interesting concept to think about Cancer suns and the need to cultivate a lot of Gemini. And so, um, if Cancer suns are going to be doing these north nodes, they're going to be talking about what's going on. They have a need to explore in conversation, right? Um, so that'd be a healthy thing to do. And I mean, relative to that Uranus also there. See, these already passed the Uranus point, but let's see if when Mars gets there. Um, so okay, here there's the Mercury and Venus are shifted into July 4th. So these Cancer suns, now we've got the huge pile up of nodes in Cancer, because as we know, we've already got Jupiter and Pluto and Saturn's north nodes in Cancer, and that we'll get more into that in the later parts. Um, Really fascinating symbols for the evolution of humanity and culture, especially the juxtaposition of this Pluto transit through Capricorn that we've been going through for many years, and how seemingly, you know, um, maybe like not human we've become, and rigid with bureaucracy and red tape and rules. And it's just like people are people, and we're trying to have them do so many things. And there's clearly a lot of need to focus on the Cancer archetypes in society, and true social security, not just how it's defined by this you know check that you get when you reach a certain age, but the idea that in a really healthy cancer archetype in a culture, true security would be that you could walk out your door and feel secure no matter who you are. And we know that's not true right today. And we know that not everybody wants that yet. But I think on some level, everybody wants that for themselves. So we need to have this awakening that that's actually the value to cultivate at a collective level. But how do we get there? So, and a lot of people are doing lots of great work on this. All of the deeper emoting and emotional work, all the work that astrology has moved. I've been really motivated in my path by Patricia Walsh's work, and a lot of the getting out of the linear rational left brain and getting into the the emotion, this whole idea of not doing spiritual bypass, and um, all of these things that kind of correlate to the deeper emotional work, and this idea that um, there's been a lot of spirituality through patriarchy that has bypassed emotions, or via Capricorn just kind of repressed them and not allowed them expression. And so that can all these Cancer North nodes correlate to all this emotional wisdom, right? In the schools, we're realizing that we've been measuring intelligence a certain way. So all that to say, but this is all relevant because if you're a Cancer Sun and you're born July 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, look at that conjunction of the North Node of Mercury and Venus in Cancer, right? And then as we move on through Cancer, look at this conjunction with Jupiter at the end of Cancer Suns and those nodes. I think a lot of these people with their purpose in life, they're going to be part of that collective evolution, and part of teaching us a healthy way of accessing our emotions in so many different modalities. So it's a, it's a really beautiful thing potentially here. Now, now to backtrack, let's go back and watch these South Nodes movement, and then we'll wrap up Cancer. So you can see that. Uh, Oops, I went too fast. My computer's. You're doing great. You're doing great. Okay. So you can see the early Cancers. This 26th and 27th. There's that south node of Venus is conjunct the north node of Neptune. That's pretty interesting. And and then here we've got July 5th, 6th, and 7th. That south node of Mercury is conjunct the north node of Neptune. Now that north node of Neptune is, so in evolutionary astrology, Pisces, Neptune, 12th house initially correlates to consciousness itself, and obviously collective consciousness. So the north node of Neptune in Leo represents this ideal in the collective consciousness that is emerging. And so I've always noticed that the emphasis on heroes and heroines, the hero's journey, entertainment, um, one's purpose in life, creative self-expression. These are all Leo traits that, because we aren't traveling back in time 2,000 years, we don't really have. It's subjective. It's subjective. We don't really know. This is what we know. This is the reality. This is the matrix that we were born into. So we don't have this real clear understanding that how much that North Node of Neptune in Leo right now emphasizes and illustrates that this is up in the collective psyche, if that makes sense. These things are um, so if that has so much meaning for us now, um, these people who come in with these south nodes conjunct that north node of Neptune in Leo, they're kind of coming in with whether it's Mercury or Venus, um, certain ways of relating or certain gifts that may like kind of hit a certain note, kind of potentially within the collective itself, and influence the evolution, like creating a larger ripple in the collective pond, so to speak, of consciousness regarding this evolution of performance, of entertainment, of creativity, of ways of relating and expressing ourselves. It uh, of of dramatic writing, like it could be a lot of things. So just to highlight that. And then you notice now we've got this shift is really fascinating to me because once we hit July 9th, so there's these latter Cancer suns coming with a south node of Venus in Virgo are going to be, to me, a very different flavor, so to speak, than a south node of Leo. Obviously, um, these Cancer suns are going to naturally be a lot more self-analyzing and self-reflective, and naturally more humble. Um, and I'm not saying that if if someone has a south node of Venus and Leo, that they're just full of, like we need that, we need that flair too. Like you're here, you come in with your gifts, we need you to bring that, but it's just a different shift. So obviously, what we know about astrology, if these south nodes are operating in an immature way or an unconscious way, the south node of Venus in Leo, Cancer suns are going to be acting childish and like over the top dramatic. You're like, whoa, whoa. And the south node of Venus in Virgo, Cancer suns are going to be more having this implosion in themselves, and perhaps a lot more of a struggle with their own self-value and self-worth in those times of struggle and crisis, if it's not in a healthy place at the time, right? But knowing this gives us a lot of clues when we look at the chart and get to know these people. So, so when we get to the end here, also notice that the north node of Mars, it does reach this conjunction with the north node of Uranus. In fact, so if you're born, or if you know people born, I mean, even look at, it's a slower conjunction. So even July 13th, 14th, 15, right? 17th, 18th, it's 19th, it's right on there. 20, even the 20th, 21st. So all this latter week of Cancer suns basically have a north node Mars Uranus conjunction in Gemini. Obviously, when Mars and Uranus get together, the desire to break free and liberate is very significant. The phrase freedom fighter, this could be very like revolutionary in someone's message to the world, or their writing, and even just in communication and speech. They could be, if they're really stepping into these north nodes, they're really, desiring to free their mind from a lot of the conditioning and the things that just aren't resonating with who they really are. um, and even if you take the north node of Uranus as this, blueprint, future direction for the soul itself, that's something that we correlate Uranus Aquarius 11th house to, blueprint for the soul in evolutionary astrology, having that Mars there, that desire to Mercury discover their own souls. Like, what's the blueprint, what's the path that I go, how am I completely liberated to discover, to be authentically me in what I do next. And so there's going to be that Mars Uranus flare there with these Cancer suns. Pretty interesting. So here we are, Leo Sun time. Also, this is being recorded on it's the Aquarius full moon. The sun's in Leo in the summer, like August 11th. Is that what we're at here? August 11th. So we're moments before the full moon. So I here we are. and then we have this Uranus square the full moon right now. Um, Interesting energy today, for sure. So, so Leo starts with just this one south node of Mercury in Leo, south node of Venus is in Virgo, and that south node of Mars is still in Libra. We didn't talk about that much for Cancers. Um, but, and just to touch on this in general, if you have a south node of Mars in Libra, depending on where it is in the chart, that obviously could be this desire to, need to be needed, to be in relationship coming from a past life perspective. It's really fascinating to contemplate that. I know a lot of people have a south node of Mars in Libra, so you really got to contextualize this by putting it in the house first and thinking about how does that fit? Like what was that past desire and how does that play out now? Um, just a quick example, I've seen a south node of Mars in Libra in the 12th house, and I've seen that be a blind spot for people and um, getting into relationship and then having that kind of massive disillusionment at a certain point. And it's hard, obviously, and you feel like, well, how did I not see that coming? And like, well, you got a south node of Mars in Libra in the 12th, so you know it's okay. It's okay. You're just kind of you're reliving it, and you're up to speed. Like that happened. Okay, I remember that. Move on. Um, so so as we move into through Leo season, we can see that it doesn't take long before we have both the south node of Mercury and Venus in Virgo. And this is kind of something that I've said repeatedly is that, if you really want to talk about the fullness of Leo narcissism, you're not really going to find it in the Leo sun as much as Leo moon, Pluto in the fifth house, South Node in Leo, South Node of Leo, fifth house, right? More likely to me, you're going to see that because, I mean, Leo suns are, a lot of these Leo suns are coming from a South Node of Mercury and Venus in Virgo. So just having a sun in Leo, um, you can have that great expression, that confidence, but you know they're also going to be naturally more inclined to be self-analyzing. They're going to be more inclined that what they're bringing forward and creating in the world is helpful in some fashion. It's not just all about them being center stage. That's not what this says. um, and so as we move through that Leo time, we get to now here on the 9th, that south node of Venus has gone into Libra. And here, actually, this is where we are today, August 11th. We still have the south node of Mercury and Virgo, and now we've got the two Libra south nodes of Venus and Mars. So that's interesting too, is to have Venus and Mars, these two planets that most correlate with relationship and desire to connect, both those south nodes in Libra. So to me, that's really interesting about Leo suns is, um, so in evolutionary astrology, we talk about Libra and the need to be needed. Well, if you've got Mercury and Venus south node in Libra and you're a Leo, you're coming from that place of needing to be needed. So you could see how that can merge with this Leo need of attention, right? See what I'm saying here? If we lived in another era, another time where these weren't in Libra at all, honestly, how much different would Leo suns be in their need to be needed? And also, in context to this, that's a south node pattern. So if we flip and look at these north nodes, um, in this case, we've got a north node of Venus down here in conjunction with the north node of Saturn, right? Watch that for a minute. So we've got a bunch of these Leos mid Venus Saturn north node conjunction in Cancer. I mean, talk about, evolving the security to be, in your own authority, potentially totally alone at times. Obviously, Cancer squares Libra. So I think that you can see a little bit of this psychological complex that Leo suns would have experienced because they have such a strong call, a lot of them, to develop this Cancer, to be totally secure within themselves without the the social other people be like, yeah, you're great, you're awesome, I love you, this is really helpful. It's not necessarily what they're here to develop and evolve. So that's pretty interesting, right? As we move closer to the end of Leo, notice that we've got this north node of Mercury Neptune. This is really interesting. So if you know anyone born with that north node of Mercury Neptune conjunction, um, I do feel like the concept of feeling like somebody really has a special calling in life, like Mercury conjunct the north node of Mercury, north node of Neptune conjunction, definitely a sense of having a special purpose, having a special message that you have for the collective, right? What is that? And especially this one, like right at the end, that north node of Venus goes into Leo. Um, so basically, most of all Leo suns have that north node of Venus in Cancer. Uh, and so, in terms of what Leo suns are sharing, they're evolving a sense of being secure within themselves about that, what they're sharing. And relative to the south nodes, now you really kind of got to compare it. Was that south node of Venus, was it in Virgo, or was it in Libra? And so just to backtrack for a second, here's that cross date. So Leo's up to August 8th. They're having that south node of Venus in Virgo, right? And then the 9th onward, we've got that in Libra. So there's going to be a different flair and dynamic there. Obviously, I would say that having a south node of Venus and Mars in Libra, and having that Libra naturally square that Cancer, there's more of a challenge there inherently from where they're coming from and where they need to go. And obviously, like Saturn is work, so it's like you got to work for this. And also this is, like what are your emotional boundaries in relationship? How are you establishing your own authority in relationship? This is like work for some Leo Sun people here, where it's like, are you just like impulsively like, I just want them because it's a compulsion for me to have that person in my life, um, or are you secure in who you are and realize what's really healthy for you emotionally in doing that work? Those are questions for Leos based on these nodes. So now, as I mentioned, of course, that north node of Mars is still just kind of hanging out in Gemini the whole time. So they have all Leo suns have that north node of Mars in Gemini. And again, because this is such a broad pattern, like the outer planet nodes, you're going to want to put that in a house in a chart and start there with your questions of what is that north node of Mars in Gemini in this house? How do I see that? How do I see that as a direction to go in my life? Because if Mars is the lower octave of Pluto, the soul's desire, and that's why we're reincarnating, that's why we're here. And that north node of Mars is, that leading edge of emerging desires that we have. What is that? So putting it by house context is huge to get some deeper direction. I mean, you've got the Pluto polarity, if that's relevant in the chart. You've got the north node, assuming there's not a resolution to the south node. You've got, doing your Mars, and then you've got this north node of your Mars. So you've got a lot of things pointing to how we evolve. And of course, the rulers of these nodes will give us more information that facilitates these processes. So what I'm saying there is, if you put that north node of Mars in Gemini in a house in a chart, so let's just say, for example, it's in the fifth house, right? Um, so maybe the person realizes at some point that they do desire to be a broadcaster, or to be a radio voice, and they really get into discovering how to fully express themselves with their voice. North Node of Mars in Gemini in the fifth house. Now that is ruled by Mercury in the chart. So where's their natal Mercury? That would give you more information about how that's going to be expressed and give you more information about how they can facilitate cultivating that North Node of Mars, if that makes sense. It gets kind of intense because there's so much information and you can kind of get lost in the weeds. But if you kind of um, contextualize things in this way, um, you can get a lot more information off of looking at not just the north nodes and the south nodes, but also their rulers. I don't I don't really recommend diving fully into that at first because just grasping the nodes is a lot, but I'm just planting that seed for when it feels right for you. And maybe it does now. So here we are, our last sun sign for today, and then we're wrapping it up. Sun's in Virgo. Now, Virgo suns, again, we've got, of course, south node of Venus and Mars are in Libra. South node of Mercury is in Virgo. Um, and just for starters, it's really interesting. I mean, obviously, Virgo is the most humble sign of the zodiac. Um, Obviously, Virgo suns get um, Virgo as an archetype in general has definitely gotten stereotypes, and in mainstream culture and society, most people think Virgo, they just think Virgo sun. Well, you're a Virgo, you're really picky, or da 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 da. Well, uh, some Virgos have a South Node of Mercury in Virgo, so that's going to add to that a little bit. Um, what's interesting with these early Virgo suns is that this North Node of Mercury and Venus are in Leo. So it's a very fascinating juxtaposition to think about because, you know, um, if you go through the zodiac and zodiac order, there's this whole larger concept of, in Aries, we're at the gate, we're just in this process of discovery. It's just full on, like the energy's got to go out. It's trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. And we're in this process of self-discovery, and in Taurus we become established and rooted in who we are or what the thing is, right? And in Gemini, from this Taurus place of being really established, we really begin to branch out and discover more possibilities of how this could be, which directions we could go. And then at the first quarter square into Cancer, there's this classic, crisis in action. What, like Jeffrey Wolf Green would say, what hat will I wear, or like, um, what persona or personality am I going to come into now? Like, how am I going to really come into this is me? This is who I am. I'm not just discovering it. I'm kind of fully becoming this. And from that, in Leo, it grows into its fullest expression. So Virgo, obviously, naturally following that, is where we learn to um, we learn to it's like Leo's like, like I fully went for it. It got into its fullness. Now Virgo's like, okay, now refine that. Now take in some of the feedback that you got. Listen to that and prepare yourself to go into Libra, entering the social sphere as an equal. And so that's this Virgo transitional process in the zodiac. However, I say all that because you've got Virgo suns, but then they've got these north nodes of Mercury and Venus in Leo. So it's almost kind of like, well, okay, you've got this Virgo energy going, and you've actually got to go back and develop some of this Leo energy. So now, if Virgo's too, in this case, potentially, with all these two Venus and Mars south nodes in Libra, if they're too dependent on other people's for what's the word I'm thinking of, validation or approval, or you're doing great, or needing to be needed, um, and it being self-analyzing and browbeating oneself here, it's kind of like saying, okay, for these Virgo suns, like you got to come back to some Leo. You got to bring back in some of this real positive self-esteem. You've got to become fuller of yourself. You develop a sense of self-pride. You've got to bring some of this into expression. So it's an interesting juxtaposition to think about with Virgo suns. So it's almost like saying Virgo suns have a bit of a Leo calling, basically. It is saying that as we move through. And you can see we're into September, and now we've got all three interplanetary interplanet nodes in Libra. Um, and so these Virgos would come in with a highly developed Libra traits. I mean, Libra Libra correlates to listening, right? So some of these Virgo suns could just naturally be great listeners, diplomatic naturally, right? It's like, wow. So these are Libra traits, but Virgo sun expression of Libra traits that we'd be seeing. Also, in evolutionary astrology, we talk about how Libra goes to extremes. So throw those Libra South nodes in a house, and it's like, what extreme were was were you going to? You get some context. The house is going to give you the place in their life that they have gone to extremes in the past, because that's clearly what this is saying. So where were those? I don't. That's that's why we got the chart. We got clues. Now notice that we still have. Oh yeah, here's where that north node of Mars just dips into Cancer for a second. But and we've got the north node of Mercury and Venus in Leo. So again, a lot of the Virgo suns are really called to develop Leo. And even okay, at September 11th, now the north node of Mercury goes into Virgo relative to the south node of Mercury being in Libra. So, these are things that what you know about astrology already, you can apply in and we talked about in the earlier segments on the planetary nodes that Mercury has all these planetary archetypes have this trinity of past, present, future. So the south node of Mercury is the past, and of course the north node is the future, what we're developing. And then there's of course the natal Mercury, which is the present, which does also correlate to the past and the future, but um, for simplicity's sake, that trinity of past, present, future. So so just to kind of say, like, if you came from a south node of Mercury in Libra, but then you're now going towards a north node of Mercury in Virgo, what does that mean for these Virgo suns, right? Um, it could be, okay, you're really good at sharing and just like, yeah, you could just connect and say everything that's going on for you, talk 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 talk, but maybe there's a need to be more introspective, um, within yourself about some of this. You know, again, you have to have a house context, and this date, the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th is really fascinating because again we have this north node of Venus conjunct that north node of Neptune in Leo, and so even more, I would say, because it's conjunct Neptune, there's even more of a sense of a special calling, that there's something that you're supposed to share creatively about who you are or some purpose, Venusian purpose. Like, what could that be? What house does that fall in? And how that is that ripple in the collective pond, that you have some calling to contribute to this collective evolution, bring forth something. Uh, so, and relative to having the north node of Mars in Cancer at this point in time for these latter Virgo suns, then there's this need to cultivate the security to bring forward and fully express and share. So as we wrap up here, we can see that at the end of Virgo Sun, we've finally reached this conjunction of the south nodes of Venus and Mars in Libra. It's really interesting. And of course, the south node of Mercury is in Libra. So, um, and then we've got, little Mercury north node in Virgo, Venus north node in Leo, Mars north node in Cancer, but then all three of these south nodes in Libra. Do you really think about your Virgo people in your life as coming from a lot of Libra energy? And in Virgo's analysis, how does the Libra comparison and contrast mingle into that, right? So I think that, there's really a potential for brilliance with this too, right? Because the meticulous nature of Virgo and the level of detail and analysis that one can get into if you're comparing and contrasting all these things, you can really gain a lot of insight. But of course, on the flip side of it, it could be detrimental because you're you're comparing yourself to other people. You might be like needing to be needed by other people, and that can throw you off of really being secure enough and fully in your own path and purpose, as this north node of Venus and Mars point to here. So that is going to wrap this up, and I really appreciate you tuning in. Oops. Uh-oh. I have to, there we go. Coming back. Okay. I'm going to stop my recording here, and unless
Thank
actually,
you, Bradley.
do you want to say anything or have any questions before we stop this?
No, well, I just want to say wow again. I'm always just blown away by what you bring to the discussion, and look forward to the next one for sure.
Okay, yeah, I gotta build the other half of the zodiac. I've got 180 slides to build, so
Wow,
I
you're going to
better
be
get
busy.
here.
Well, we won't look for it next week, but hopefully soon.
Well, thank you so much again for hosting.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here.
Great to see you. Okay.